All right, hello and welcome everyone. It is Tuesday, October 18th, and we are here at the beginning of week 4, ready to talk about the last round of assignments and talk about your week 3 submissions. This afternoon's class will be similar to our other sessions, our other Tuesday sessions, where we will start out with a bit of peer review. And I have a logic session here filled with a couple of submissions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 different submissions to go through from Palace of Orinthalion. That's what you turned in last week or on this past Sunday. So we'll take some time to go over those, talk about the project as a whole, and talk about different approaches that we hear. And really, week 3 is the peak of the class, the most where you're full on in week 3 projects, the last biggest composition here for the month, along with week 2 revisions. So everything kind of gently comes back down to earth here for week 4. And so we will get into also kind of in the towards the second half of our class this afternoon into the new week 4 assignments, where our focus in our last week is to kind of sum up the class, talk about how you can take the things that you've learned and the projects that you've worked on and apply them outside of the class. Really, how do you get started in the industry? How do you find clients and find work in the game industry as a whole? So the focus of our assignments are how do you take the projects that you've worked on and kind of craft them into a final demo project that you can show off, demo videos that you can add to a portfolio reel or demo reel, put them on a website, share them around to prospective clients and prospective employers. So that is where we are headed in this last week, and the assignments kind of revolve around that idea. Plus, you will talk about, of course, the peer review for week 3, and you have an opportunity to revise all of the. Oops, looks like we got. Hold on, just a sec. Let me do that right there. Looks like we have. A couple different. Oh, you have the opportunity for revisions. You turned in your week 3 assignments, and you have one more round of cleaning up and making any changes to the Palace of Orinthalion composition before you put it into a final video for the month. So that's where we are headed for this afternoon. Let's talk a bit about the week 3 game composition, Palace of Orinthalion. Kind of talk about it as a whole, generally the types of things that we are listening for, and then we'll just take a look at everybody's project, see if there's anything that we can identify visually before we dive into it version by version. So you see that this time we have the tracks laid out vertically. All the previous times we've done this, we've had each student laid out on a track, and each submission has its own track that we listen to. But for this one, we are focusing on a vertical composition, and so our tracks are vertically laid out or stacked one on top of each other, so they have the possibility of playing together at the same time. Then I'm just going to take it up fader by fader, and we'll listen to each one of them individually. And then we will go back and bring all 4 faders up, listen to them as a group, and make sure that they are going to ultimately work and make sense as they play together. So this time we have everything organized. You'll see the different markers up here, which indicates which student submission it is. So you'll see yours up there. And then we have them laid out kind of back to back on the same tracks. So we have earth, fire, water, wind. This is how it imports alphabetically. And then we have everybody's earth tracks on, earth cues on the earth track, fire, water, and wind, and so on. And so we'll listen to these all together. Hold on just a moment. Okay. So the most important thing that we are listening for in these submissions is to make sure that they the cues have the possibility of playing one or two, three, or even all four of them at the same time. So, as a composition, we are listening for any sort of clashing or dissonant notes as you combine the different cues together. We are listening for any clashing rhythms as you put the cues together. We want to make sure that they all follow a similar chord progression so that they make sense when played together. Generally, the specifications are they're all going to need to start at the same time, they're all going to need to end at the same time so that they can loop together. They're going to need to be in the same key so that they make sense harmonically and melodically. You are going to need to be at the same tempo and time signature so that they rhythmically make sense when played together. So if there's so many things that are similar between all of them, namely tempo, time signature, key signature, chord progression, then what's going to make each one of them unique? So the things that we're listening for individually between each cue is to make sure that the instrumentation and the melody that is used in each cue fulfills the overall aesthetic or theme of that cue. So the things that are going to make each one of them unique and different is your choice of instrumentation that matches that overall intended theme of that cue. We stated that the Earth cue is meant to be heroic and adventurous and represent the main character or hero of the game. The Fire cue represents the action and battles in the game. The Water cue represents the emotional twists and turns in the game. And the Wind cue represents danger or a stealth element as the player may try to avoid any sort of action or battle. So each one of them has their own aesthetic, their own kind of feel for each one. So we'll be listening to appropriate instrumentation. Each cue should have enough instrumentation that it stands alone. So you should have 3 or 4 instrument layers that represent instruments in the lower range, the mids, the highs, so melody, melodic development through each cue, that they have their own melodic voice that is then heard when combined together. Overall, with the mix, we'll also pay attention to things like looping and mixing. Looping here, sometimes having multiple cues play at the same time can, if you only have just a little bit of an issue in looping of a file in one of the 4, then sometimes the other ones can kind of hide that. But if you start getting more obvious issues in 2 or 3 or all 4 of them, then it can be amplified by having them play simultaneously. What else can we come up with? When all 4 of them are playing together at Unity, really remember all the game is doing when you walk out any one of those doors and turn on and off the music is it's going from negative infinity or all the way down, and then it brings the volume to Unity at 0, and then the player can turn on all 4 of these. So you want to make sure that when all 4 of these are playing at Unity that it doesn't completely overload the meters of your main output. So you want the final mix, the final level that you want, in these bounced faders, well, the bounced files. So all the faders have to do is bring them up to Unity, and it will be the perfect mix as you intended. All right. So that's most of the things that I can come up with that we'll be paying attention overall. Just looking at them generally, we're looking for looping and the general specifications of the files. These look like they're set up correctly. These are not going to loop properly because there's one of these files that is at a different length. What will happen is this one will start looping before the next one, and there we go. And it'll cause things to go out of sync when it starts looping at a different time. So looks like the 3 out of the 4 of these are the same length, so you probably want to recompose this piece of music so that it makes sense within one cue, or one set of 16 bars. These look set up properly. These are all pretty good, just visually. This one's going to cause issues again. There's gaps at the ends of each one of these files. And, well, they look like they are all the same length. They're just bounced at different lengths. So chopping off the gaps, the silence at the end of the files will probably help. The rest of these look like they're generally set up correctly. So let's go ahead. We'll just zoom in on one at a time and take a listen. I'll probably jump around in the faders a little bit. I typically will go with the earth cue, then I'll jump over to the wind, fire, and water as we listen through them. It's a solid progression. So let me know if you have any questions as we progress through. Start with earth. Let's do this. Start with our master. The first thing that I notice. Okay, it sounds like the fiddle, the strings are kind of sitting on the whole notes. There's a little bit of movement in between, but instead of such sustained parts, right, just a little bit more movement in there for melody. Maybe have the percussion move around a little bit through that cue. Let's bring in the wind cue. Same sort of issue, just basically outlining the chord change. Definitely need a bit more movement from one chord to the next. Lead melodic line would work. Feels like there's a strong bass element in the right channel. Depends on where you have the rest of the instrumentation, but you might want to watch out for really hard panned instrumentation. I know typically there's a traditional panning setup of the orchestra, but I'll listen to the entire balance of the mix to make a call on that. Let's go to the fire cue. Alright, we got strong percussion through here. I definitely think you hit the power element of it. Again, just a little bit more movement from that trumpet could probably indicate a melody. Definitely need brass through the use brass through the whole thing. Yeah, the brass is much more powerful. We have other elements that are playing. So continue that all the way through. It gets a little too sparse there in the middle. You could use the harpsichord, although you had. Almost sounds like a harpsichord or a harp. Instead of just alternating back and forth, try to create a line through these. All of the cues have a follow the progression well. Let's bring them all in together, like they fit together nicely. But I need to feel a stronger melodic line in each cue instead of just outlining the chords. All right, good stuff to start with. The elements work together nicely. Let's take a listen. We'll just start with the earth cue over here. So we got the string part and the brass. The brass could be a little brighter, a little more present through the mix. And the strings, they really feel like they're played on a keyboard. They don't feel like they are, the performance is off of an actual violin or viola. And that typically is, or would be helped by overlapping notes. It really feels like I can hear you switch where your hand is playing the chords. So overlapping notes can help transition from one chord to the next and eliminate those little gaps in between. Progression is good, will work. Let's bring in something else, the wind cue. There's some tension through here. Watch the intervals between the earth cue and the fire cue. There's even some dissonance within just the wind cue on its own. So watch some of those intervals. The instrumentation and the percussion could be stronger. It also feels like a 2-bar loop, just kind of going around and around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. So eliminate the repetition and bigger percussion, more brass, bigger instrumentation through the fire cue. Some of the instrumentation of the fire cue it just kind of sounds similar overall. This percussion sounds out of place here. The instrumentation's kind of sparse, the chords. Feels like a couple of chords going around and around. So, and probably could just chop this part off. Looks like it's there, it just was bounced incorrectly. So, and watch the beginning of the water cue here. It kind of fades in or something. Oh, it just doesn't have the drums in like the first bar or so. So make that consistent all the way through so it will loop around smoothly. And yeah, focus on how they sound when played together. Watch out for the clashing notes and rhythms. Follow a common chord progression and stick to that key that it's in. Okay. Try the next one here. All right. Great progression. A nice melodic line. Some percussion, loops well. So far, so good. Let's go into the wind cue. This cue might be a bit low. Water and wind, you got to compare, mix it against the fire cue. We don't want it to kind of be overshadowed too much by it. Maybe some instrumentation in a lower register through the wind cue. Maybe a little, some low timpani. Something that kind of feels a little balanced too much to the high end. Let's go for the fire cue. The mix of this one seems... The drums feel far off and almost like distorted. You need a lot more clarity, more presence. Everything kind of feels kind of spooky and far off. There's like one low drone there that's constant. There's the choirs, which could work. It just needs more power to it overall. The drone kind of muddies everything up because it just sits there all the time. Yeah, I can barely hear the water when I pull up the fader. So watch the levels of that one. It feels a bit sparse overall with the staccato strings and the woodwinds. Works well together with the wind, but it kind of gets lost with everything else. When listening together, and maybe it's still that drone, it just kind of gets into this big whole wash overall. So you're going to need a bit more clarity through the cues to bring out a bit more of the punch between the different instrument layers, and watch the balance between them all. All right. Keep going here. Next. Start with your cue. Cool. Cool. A solid start there, good progression. Nice strong melodic line. Let's go for the wind cue. Good. It occupies the lower registers. Little melodic line there. Maybe a little bit of percussion could work through that through that wind cue. Stop it. All right, let's go to the fire cue. Great power from the instrumentation. Strong punch from the fire cue. So you hit the cymbal crash, but it's missing in the beginning. It's like gets pretty thin there at the beginning. Like you had the trumpets going, you have a crash there, crash here, and a crash here. But add something into the beginning of the fire cue so that it's not, it kind of gives away where the loop point is. Great. Again, watch the loop there. There's a noticeable reset of all the instrumentation. But overall, everything fits well together. Maybe is a bit too loud overall. If I brought this up. Pretty darn close. So, nice work overall. Everything fits well together. Just a couple of tweaks. Watch the loops on those cues. Save. All right, next one here. All right, strong percussion, probably even a little bit too big for this cue, but not much else. I mean, there seems some like melodic element in there, but it's just hitting a chord if it is. The wind. Okay, each cue is going to need more instrumentation than just one, maybe two layers. This one feels mostly like harps. This one felt more like percussion. All right, this one's more appropriate with the snare and the brass. Maybe everything feels kind of thin in the top range, so you need some instrumentation in the lower range, lower brass, big timpanis. The snare drum almost sounds a little bit too modern. Maybe it's kind of the reverb that I'm hearing on it. The brass also feels a bit synthy. Maybe it's like a similar velocity on each cue. or on each note, sorry. Water. This almost feels like an organ, like a synth or some filtered instrumentation. Keep everything to acoustic orchestral sources. So, and otherwise it's almost sounds underwater, as opposed to it's more of a literal interpretation overall, as opposed to an emotional theme. Plus, the cues are only 8 bars. These need to be twice as long overall. Let me count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So there's halfway, and I'm at 4. So yeah, these are 8 bars long, need to be 16. Extend them out without just repeating the phrases, or just repeating the performance. Fill them out with more instrumentation. Watch out for the kind of synthy sounding instrumentation from the fire and the water loop. All right. Earth, fire, water, wind. The earth and the fire even the earth seems louder than the fire, which certainly seem louder than the water and the wind. So we're going to listen to each one of those. Starting out with the earth cue. Good. Excellent. I like to change to the accordion. Great, very melodic, solid progression that should work against the other cues. Solid melodic line. Let's bring the wind cue in. The instrumentation in the lower ranges could come up just a little bit. I often like to hear just a little bit of low timpani or bass drum percussion through here, almost like a pulse or a heartbeat. You got a nice line there. I typically mention how the melodic line needs to be moved forward and be very present, but I would actually say this one kind of dominates the rest of the instruments in the wind cue. It probably works well against the others, especially the fire and the earth cue, but maybe bring up some of that harmonic instrumentation. Fire. Alright, fits the theme well. A strong progression, good power from the percussion. Yeah, not much, too much to disagree with there. Good stuff. I would say that the harpsichord and the woodwind are just too closely connected. They almost move identically. not as much in the first half. There we go. Yeah, so just separate their movement a little bit. Watch the levels. Let's bring everything in together. Yeah, you have to bring down the earth cue and the fire cue just a bit to be able to really have those water and wind cues stick out. So probably, well, it's going to be a balance. So bringing these down just a little bit and these up just a little bit to make it all balance and work in the mix. All right. Good, good. Hold on. Just one moment. All right, let's move on to the next one. Hold on, I just gotta look real quick. How are we doing so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, about halfway. There we go. Earth cue. All right. I like how the harp has kind of gone an octave up in the second half here. It was actually one of the first things that I thought about. The first half is that the harp was a bit too low, so you could bring the what you're doing the first half here up an octave on that harp. The flutes or the woodwinds and the harp work well together. Would like to maybe hear a little bit of percussion in there, just some small handheld percussion to give a little bit of pulse to it. This part sounds a little too thin compared to the other half, and I'm wondering if that's just because move the harp up higher in the range. Well, actually, it feels like the flute has changed a bit also in the second half. Let's try the wind cue. Pizzicatos work through here. Try have more movement from the cellos than just hitting the chord. Oops, just hitting the chord changes. I mean, you have the pizzicato, but it's like a chord change, pizzicato, chord change, pizzicato, chord change, pizzicato. And it just kind of goes back, just outlining the chords. Would like to hear a little bit more from a melody or just more movement from the cello. Fire cue. Same idea through here, mostly outlining the chords, could have a lot more movement from the different brass layers. See, doing a little bit more there. Yeah, there's just some more movement in that before you just keep holding on the whole notes. Bigger percussion, more power through the fire cue. Water cue. All right, this one. Works a little bit better. I think some of the choir kind of goes out of range there. The organ plus choir work well against the piano part. And it looks like you got the makings of a melody line there from the piano. So some solid instrumentation there. Let's bring everything in together. Sounds quite good when it is all put together. Certainly, you hit the chord changes, just a little bit of more movement from some of the key instruments in each one of the cue to kind of fulfill that melodic line. All right. Let's try the next one here. Great melodies, counter melodies, kind of playing back and forth. Maybe a little bit more smaller percussion to kind of get in between the hits of the bigger drum. And a very identifiable melody. Wind cue. Well, watch the loop there. Kind of like something gets cut off there. It feels like it was about to swell up and get cut off. I would say that the string line here has too slow of an attack for the pace that you actually play the notes. You probably need to take all the MIDI and drag it forward just by 64th or 128th, just a small little few milliseconds before the actual where that actual note would hit, so that the strings have a little bit of time to fade in and reach that note so that it actually hits it in time. Some of the lines, the faster parts, which aren't really all that fast, but some of the lines that you play have the attack from the string line is a little too slow to really kind of follow it. So either find maybe layer a staccato attack along with what you're playing, or drag it forward a little bit, or slow down the line. Some of those things will help. It feels a little unnatural in the playback of it. I would say some of the same similar things here for the brass. The staccato of the brass that you have that's going on that rhythm. The staccato is fine. It's tight. It's in tempo enough. But some of the slower, sustainy lines just feel kind of a little bit behind the tightness of that rhythm there. Especially whatever's going on in the right channel. That brass feels a little bit behind the beat. Oh, and I think there's a similar issue that we had a couple of listens earlier. You have a crash all over the place, except for the downbeat, the front. Crash, crash, and then no crash. Especially on the beginning here would be a good place for a crash cymbal. Alright, since there's so much brass in the fire cue, I would kind of warn away against that, or warn against it for the water loop also. It just kind of mixes in too much as it's kind of expected or feels like it goes with the fire cue. So maybe a lighter instrument as a whole. You could keep the same line, put it to a woodwind of some sort or a string, and you probably get a usable substitute for that. But the brass trumpet sounds better for the fire cue. Yeah, most of what I hear is some timing issues. The jingle bell, the sleigh bells are quite loud when brought all in together. But compositionally, it works well, harmonically, melodically, things fit well together. Just some general tweaks overall, some tightening up of the rhythmic performance. Next. Alright, right now the instrumentation sounds too modern. The drum pattern, definitely too modern. Feels like a drum kit as opposed to orchestral percussion. The organ, I guess, feels almost like a synth. Or there does feel like there's some synths in there. And some of it is because of how it's played. Everything feels like it has a similar velocity on it all the way through, so there's not very much kind of human performance through it. Watch the looping through the wind cue. Like the fast hi-hat really doesn't work for the style of the game. Watch the looping patterns through the fire. Again, also something that kind of gives away, makes it sound too modern overall in its production. Now, if I had started by hearing this first, would say it's a little bit more appropriate overall. It still does kind of repeat the phrasing, but at least the instrumentation and the there's no percussion, there's no like drum machine percussion through here. Watch the loop overall, but the instrumentation is a bit more appropriate through here. Yep. Watch the repetition. Watch the more modern production style and instrumentation. Use melodic lines to develop all the way through the cue. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's going to be all right. Yeah, let's try the next one here. The biggest issue here is going to be the fact that it's not going to loop, so we'll just kind of tidy it up there. You want to make sure that you're bouncing and double checking all the files. Let's see if there's something else I can count in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's 16 bars. The looping's off. The fire cue is like synths. So that's not going to really work. Yeah, there's like a kick drum. The kick drum is repeated in multiple cues, so if you play like this, it's going to just dominate the mix. Yeah, and they don't line up or anything, so there's a lot of things that need to be tweaked through there. Choice of instrumentation, looping, percussion, kind of work more on the overall instrumentation and aesthetic to kind of fulfill the theme of the cue. Earth cue. There we go. All right, the level that you build to through here, well, actually, it's probably a little bit too much through the third part, but the second one is probably a more appropriate instrumentation, like the size of the instrumentation. It's a little bit too sparse and too repetitive through the first third of this cue. So I would definitely extend the woodwinds all the way through the entire cue and just develop and change the progression as you progress forward. Watch out for the repetition of bum ba da 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 bum 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 bum. That phrase is just kind of repeated and really doesn't move anywhere after that. Wind cue. The bass drums are probably too low. Not going to translate nicely across a lot of kind of consumer systems. almost like, again, sounds like there's some synth elements in there, like a voice. Am I hearing things? Maybe I'm hearing things, but there definitely is some synth elements in there that you want to avoid. Keep it to acoustic instrumentation. Develop a melody that moves all the way through the cues. Watch the repetition within the loop. Cue works well because you have the power in the low end, but the percussion is very sparse. Again, very not only one bass drum kind of hitting the same pattern all the way through. So more from the percussion, and then probably more instrumentation in the higher registers. You occupy the low end, but some brass, some trumpets will work to create a melodic line on the higher registers. And then the water cue. I'd say the water loop does something similar to the fire cue, where there's less instrumentation in the first third of it, and that could just extend across the entire cue. So whatever you're doing here in the part 2 and part 3, then kind of extend that into part 1 to have more of the instrumentation without the repetition overall. So let's bring it all in together. The instrumentation kind of, maybe it's the reverb in there, just kind of gets washed out when brought all together. So try for some elements that punctuate the changes, build the melodic lines through the cue. All right. Next one here is the earth cue. Quite sparse. You got one chord, one kind of string part that almost feels like a synth, plus a really loud snare. The snare works. It probably is a bit more appropriate in the fire cue. Let's do the wind cue. Whoa, that's got like a synth bass in there. Again, keep it acoustic, no synths, no drum machines. Watch the repeating pattern from the string line. You want to create more of harmonic progression and melody. And it looks like the fire is going to be crazy, maybe loud and distorted. Let's see. Very compressed. right, watch the repeating phrase. Use some of the brass to create a melodic line that develops through the cue. Again, the strings feel a little synthetic. Again, you've also used strings in multiple cues. You want to switch up and use more brass and woodwinds and other cues. And it's a bit sparse through the kind of stabs from the strings. Watch out for the loop. Just heard a little hiccup there. So you got the choir that kind of sustains through the synth string chords. Probably use some other sustain string lines to have that continue and fill in those gaps so it's not just the choir. Watch the instrument. It all works when played together. There's some chords that could kind of be clarified, but watch the instrumentation throughout the cue. Watch the repetition in the parts. Build more melodic lines. Next one. Alright, great progression. Interesting instrumentation there, outlines the chord progression. Maybe you could have... the chord progression does well to... there's some melodic lines, melodic ideas in there that move away from the chord progression. Alright, let's keep going to the wind loop. The wind cue feels kind of, doesn't look mono, kind of feels mono in my headphones though. Maybe it's just my headphones. Feels very straight up and down the center. Some of the instrumentation through there is feels quite low, and volume could probably come up. The glockenspiel works. It could be brought up. The whole cue could probably be brought up to compete with the other ones. Let's go with the fire cue. Ostinatos work. There's some low end in there that's doing some weird things with my headphones. I don't know if it's a phase issue or maybe it's a mono issue. But there's some low end there that I can basically feel, but I don't really hear. The ostinatos work well through there, gives a real sense of power, a real sense of action. So let's bring them in together. They fit well. All right. Very good. Just a couple of things there overall to work with, but most of it sounds very nice on its own and when combined together. And Earth. This is definitely going to cause issues when all four of them played together on the master output. You need to balance the levels of each one, or balance the levels against each other. Guitar line, percussion, and the flute. Great progression, great changes. All right. I like the minor change towards the end there. This one's maybe a little too happy, a little too major and positive. Was that because I was just listening to the end, maybe? I don't know. There could probably be more instrumentation in the lower registers to kind of give a bit of that tension and uneasiness to balance out the instruments in the higher register. And the fire cue. This one looks like it was kind of cut off with a limiter, and its overall level kind of squashes the dynamics of this cue. You can hear it on the cymbal crashes especially. Some brass through there would help. Again, it could, along with the wind, it could probably have a little bit more power. A little too like a major, especially if off that string, a major feel from the melody. I mean, the melodies that you have through there work well overall, and the organ through the water cue feels maybe like too much of a modern rock organ, like with a Leslie speaker, as opposed to a medieval organ, like a pipe organ. have to listen to that maybe on its own. Let's bring it all back together. Yeah, great progression. There's some good melodic lines in there. I think a lot of it's going to be the mix. Will help out the clarity of the composition of all the parts when they all play together. So, great stuff here. Hold on again. All right, so we saw a lot of great submissions, different approaches to the composition. Hopefully, you kind of saw how different directions everybody was going, and what maybe picked up on a few things that will help your own composition for revision. If you have any questions as we go forward, or after you watch the archive, you see your peer review, have any questions about what I talked about, please let me know. So like I said earlier, the last week here is kind of finishing out all of your assignments, having time to finish anything out that is still outstanding, and we have one more round of assignments that will kind of feel kind of familiar as we finish out Angry Bots and put everything together for a final video capture. So the first assignment, I guess I should start again by saying there's no new game composition. We don't have a fourth game in our 4 weeks. Number one, because 3 is certainly gives us enough opportunity to talk a lot about different types of music for games. But really, we don't have a week 5 for revisions and for peer review. So I would kind of just throw it out there in the wind, and we'd get what we'd get overall. So we'd always want to have the chance for you to update it and make it the best as possible with comments and feedback, and we wouldn't have a chance to do that if we started something brand new in week 4. So this gives us a chance to finish everything out, wrap up what we have, and put it into the best format that we can use to show it off to everyone else. So you have done a similar assignment to this technical assignment in week 2. Where you did the sound design for 2D platformer. With that one, you opened up Logic and opened up your microphone and recorded a lot of vocalizations. A lot of the sounds could be just done with your voice. So for this one, a little bit different overall. Angry Bots, the sound design for Angry Bots at least, is filled with robots and explosions and doors. Those are some of the main things that you will be working on here. So to get the best kind of sources for that, we're going to have to turn to sound libraries for appropriate, interesting sound design. So let me do a couple of things here just to remind you how it is one of the best practices kind of to get things set up properly. And I always suggest that you go to the original game and pull their sound effects for reference. So here's Angry Bots. And I can go to the actual audio files. Like always, you're going to go to Contents, Data, and Streaming Assets, and that's where you will find sound effects. And there's a couple of more here. There's 22 sound effects that you will need to create. So let's try that again. And take the original sound effects and then just drag them onto a track So again, they're lined up back to back. Not at all what I wanted to do. I wanted to put them all on one track. Let's try that again. One track. Get all over sound design. And what I meant to do is when I drag these in, place all files on one track. That's really what I want. And that will bring them in and lay them all out so that you can see them, listen to them, watch their general shape, how loud they are, how quickly they fade out, or whether or not they do fade out, and then create some extra tracks down below and start building your own sounds. Again, I suggest that the Westar Music Library and the freesound.org are great sources for all sorts of different sound effects. And the way I would suggest that you approach this is to take a look at the asset list that is provided with the assignment to get a list of all of the sounds and kind of plan out how you are going to gather the sounds to make this as efficient as possible. So here is the document that you get with the assignment. And it has screenshots and descriptions of each one of the sounds so you know what we're generally talking about, even just in a static picture. But here is the asset list. And these are all of the sounds that need to be created. Total of 22 sounds. And look for groups of similar types of sounds. Go out, search those out, find those, bring them back in, and organize them together as opposed to going sound by sound. So starting out with the explosions, there's quite a few explosions. Each one of the robots has an explosion. Flying buzzer bot, destroyed explosion. Spider, destroyed explosion. Patrol mech, destroyed explosion. The mech shoots missiles, which are the shooting part of the destruction of the explosion. Self-destruct is another explosion. So listen to all of the sounds and find similar ones. So you go off, you find a couple of different types of explosions, you bring all those back and you edit them together in one shot to knock out quite a bit of sounds together. The other thing that we have a whole lot of in this game is doors. Doors opening and closing. Sometimes you can get away with the close as just the reverse of the open, maybe with a little bit of tweaks, but at least that's a good start to it. So let's go. Where are we going? Let's go to the original sounds. Oh, I thought I did that. Here they are. There we go. Let's take a listen to these. And make sure that we can all hear this. Sometimes these are pretty loud, so I can turn them down just a little bit. So I don't have tons of huge sounding explosions, non-mixed explosions going off. Sure, this'll work. Okay. Let's take a listen to some of these. Let's do the explosions first. Destroyed explosion. Patrol mech destroyed explosion. Which is like the loudest, biggest explosion in the whole game. I think it's kind of ridiculous. It's like a 7-second long file. 6, 5, something like that. Missile explosion. when they shoot the missiles, when the big patrol mech shoots it at you. Spider destroyed. When you destroy the spider, there's this one. The spider is basically a bomb on legs, so if it gets close enough, it'll do self-destruct, which I think is a pretty horrible explosion sound, but you can make yours more interesting than that. So those are all the explosions. There's a whole bunch of doors opening and closing here. Airlock door close. Airlock door open. Let's just keep going. Exterior rain. So this is when the game first starts. There is a rain sound while you are outside. So that's just a interesting rain loop. Interior hums, kind of almost like room tone, while once you walk into the building, give you an obvious shift. It's constant background. Oops. The flying buzzer when it zaps you. The patrol mech recognizes you when you're close by and has an alert sound when it notices you. Really short kind of thing. Footsteps. Right? That's really just the same sound. I like to have a little bit of different, maybe just a little bit of difference between there, maybe just pitch. But not the exact same thing like they'd have. What else? Spider alert sound when it recognizes where you are. Proximity. As the spider wanders around and gets closer and closer to you, it makes a beeping sound. And notice that this is just one beep. That beep gets faster and faster as it closes in on you. So it goes beep, 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 beep. So when you make the sound, it should just be a beep. Right? And then the game actually makes it more interesting sounding. Interior door open and close. Locked door opening. This doesn't really sound like a door. Maybe it sounds like an electric futuristic door. Player hit when you get hit by one of the missiles. Player shooting when you fire your weapon. Notice that there's a repeating sound in there. I don't know if counted, it's like 10 or 11 shots. You probably want to time your weapon sound to that. Like if I go back over here, I don't know where it is. This, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 shots. And you should have it set up to loop also. Oh, come on. Not clicking the right buttons. So that they can just lay on the button and it constantly plays. Last one is terminal hacked. Right, if you stand next to one of the computer terminals, it will unlock like that. So those are all of the sound effects. Again, just go ahead and import the original sounds into a session, then build your own sound effects right below that, bounce it out, name it, test it out in the game, so that by that point you will have completed all of the music and sound effects for 2D platformer, all of the music and sound effects for Angry Bots, and all of the music for the Palace of Renthalion. And make any revisions, any changes that you want. And the final assignment is a class discussion post where you will post up all three videos embedded in no uploaded to YouTube, and then actually embed the video inside of um, FSO, inside of the class discussion post, so that everybody can see your video, check it out. All they have to do is click on it. Doesn't even take them to YouTube. They just watch through the videos. Everybody shares their videos, makes comments, and just kind of sees what the final result is for everybody. So the final video, well, you've already done this. You've been creating videos. Oh, good question here in the chat. Separate videos or all together? Yeah, you're going to create 3 separate videos so that they can be shared to whomever, however you want. The games are all well and good as their own project, meaning that you have fully working Mac games. The only problem with that is that whoever you want to show it off to, they have to have a Mac in order to play it. They have to be able to play the game. They have to enjoy the game and the music. And so having a video capture is going to be able to give everybody insight to what you've done. A lot of people don't feel real comfortable with just downloading random applications. Like, you can take your games and put them on Dropbox, put them on your website, share them around. They're yours to demo, and for educational and non-commercial reasons, you can demonstrate them and use them for your purposes. But there's some kind of roadblocks in just sending out the working game. And now, a game developer who has a Mac and wants to check out your music actually working in the game and how it works, well, they can get access to that. But for the general population, a lot more people are going to feel a lot more comfortable with just clicking on a YouTube link and watching a video and checking out your work altogether. Plus, you get to show it off in the best light, the best you can, or the best you want, how you want exactly to show everything off. So, you've already been creating videos. Really not that much different for the final version. You want to capture them as best as you can, because who knows if a month or a year from now you would want to put it all back together and create another video. If you want, forever and always, you can always replace the music and update and change it and then create more videos off of it. But the final video capture should have music and your sound effects, revised versions of any of the music that you've done, and put it into the game one last time, run through it, and just show off all of your music and sound effects as best as you can. Again, I'm not really grading you on the exact actions that you go through the game, and I'm not going to count every single music file and sound effect to make sure that everything is demonstrated and delivered. I know that because things are random, trying to catch everything, every version or variation, sometimes a pain. You want to keep the demos to be about 60 seconds to 90 seconds long, just to give everybody an idea. And really, I'm about really focused on the whole package. The fact that you can get the videos recorded, you have the full final versions of your games, you do all 3 of them, and you post them up. If you have any issues of any of the games throughout the month, getting your music working in them, this is definitely the time to reach out to me, and we can discuss any sort of issues that you might have with your files. Do the captures, finish everything out, make it as best you can, do the captures, upload them to YouTube, and post them up on FSOs to share them with the class. That's kind of the last week, kind of the direction we are headed there. That should be everything that we need to discuss for this afternoon. We had a great couple of submissions there to take a listen to. Hopefully it gave you some information on the direction of your own composition. Let's wrap it up there. I'll stick around for a few minutes afterwards if you have any questions. But other than that, let's end there, and I will see you again on Thursday. All right? Thank you very much, and have a good evening.